Welcome to the Get Out In It podcast, keeping our mental and physical well-being balanced by heading out into nature and doing stuff.
The activity isn't important. Walk, run, hike, bike, whatever it is, just find something you enjoy and get out in it. The point of this podcast is to show how ordinary people can achieve extraordinary levels of health and fitness.
Out here, we'll share informal, inclusive advice for anyone trying to improve their mental and physical well-being, based on our own experiences and professional knowledge from our special guests.
So let's lace up and get out in it. Well, here we are. Welcome to episode 27.
27.
27. And what a week it has been. How are you, James Bale?
I'm fairly well, to be honest. I like this. You taking hold of the intro every now and again and just doing it as a surprise. It's less
Just
effort
keeping
for
everyone
me.
on their toes.
Yeah, I'm doing fairly well. Everything's heading in the right direction. How are you doing?
I'm all right, actually. Yeah, I've got the first week of the half term done, which is super cool. Still got a week left of holidays, which is even super cooler. So yeah, pretty fucking chipper.
Maintaining a very
it's
positive
sunny.
vibe.
Yes,
It's
and
sunny.
also it's very, very sunny today. We've had a week of absolute torrential pissing it down rain, which has been a bit sucky to go running in. But today it's sunny. I've been indoors all day recording podcasts, which is a massive asshole. But outdoors, out my window, it's very, very sunny. So yeah.
You did. Anyway, we'll get to what you've done to be outside, because I'm about to ask you, what have you done this week to get out in it?
Got out in it. Well, this week I have had I don't know what you would call it, like a taper up. That doesn't make sense. Getting back into my training schedule. It's not a taper up, is it?
No, it's not a taper
Ease
up.
back in. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're just
a phrase?
increasing volume and going back up through the gears a little bit to get you moving again, because you've had a bit of a recovery period after your ultramarathon, and slowly we're going to start ramping it back up again, because we don't want to bite off too much of the cherry quite yet.
So I've just been doing that. What was fun was Sunday. I had my first long run post the UTBV, and it was a 21k course that you gave me, actually, that you'd done previously, and you sent it to me, had it on my watch. So I went out on that little 21k loop, found some trails which I'd never seen before, which is really, 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 really cool, out near Limonest, which isn't somewhere I often go. So that was really, really good fun. It took me quite a long time, actually. It was my best time ever, just for sheer figures, because it was 3 hours, 33 minutes and 33 seconds. It was fucking brilliant.
Yeah, you accidentally nailed the perfect finishing time.
It was brilliant. It was perfect. But it was long for 21 kilometers. And also I'd gone off, because I was following a thingy on my watch. Actually, I'd gone off course quite a few times. So I added a little bit extra to my thing, but it was nice.
It's a good run, though, isn't it? You got to see new parts of the trails that you'd never seen before, and things that, because I remember when I did this, I downloaded this route off a Komoot app, and so I just loaded it into my watch and went and ran it. And you got to, and I said there are bits that I didn't think I've seen before, and you got to experience them.
I did, yeah, because there's a part in the Mont d'Or called Mont Verdun. It's one of the biggest peaks, but like a lot of it is off limits because there's some kind of army thing there. I don't know. It's all people with guns and uniforms and shit. So lots of the stuff around there is off limits. So I've never really explored around there, because I've just figured, well, it's all off limits, but it's not. It's not. There's some really cool fucking trails around there. So I'm going to go back out there on this Sunday, because you set me another long 3.5 hour Sunday long run.
Just go and do 3.5 hours.
Just go and do 3.5 hours.
It's not 3 hours, 33 minutes, 33 seconds, though. I will be disappointed. Nail that again.
I will never, ever, ever be able to replicate that ever. That was an absolute one-off. So I'm going to go back out and explore some more of those trails around Limonest, because it was really, really lovely. It's a bit of a bastard to get up there. I think the first sort of 7.5, 8K is pretty much uphill slog. But once you've broken the back of that, some of the trails are glorious. So that's going to be really, really good fun. So my long run last Sunday was really good fun. And then I just did some little runs. I did some speeds again this week, which was nice. Although rainy. There was no yoga because it's holidays, so I didn't do yoga. Done a few walks, did my sports in the park with my ladies this morning. So yeah, pretty active first week of holidays. It was good fun. How's your week? What have you done to get out in it this week?
Yeah, I mean, this week I've done two runs so far, with 2 more to go. My rehab plan has now gone up to 4 runs a week, which is good.
Nice.
So I've done my first run was on Tuesday, I think.
Are you being slow on purpose, or is it my connection?
No, I'm being slow on purpose. I'm just buying time for Training Peaks to load and tell me when I did my first run. Yeah, I did my first run on Tuesday, which was a 45-minute shakeout run, and I just strapped on my old Hokers, went out without music, and had 45 minutes running around in the woods to the sound of nature.
Nice.
Which was awesome amounts of fun. And then on Wednesday, I did an easy run with strides, which was an hour, 20 minutes running, then some strides, and then the remainder just as an easy run. And then I've got some running to do over the weekend. I'm going to do some hill running on Saturday and then a long run on Sunday. So my two blocks of running this week, both next to each other. So I'm looking forward to it. I've got a 2-hour long run on Sunday, and I'm looking forward to see how far I can go in 2 hours.
Nice.
My hip doesn't hurt anymore. I can't even feel it anymore. It's
that's amazing. Cyber high five.
It's like
Cyber high five.
I've done it. It's not quite. It's not quite the same as the other hip yet. I can still feel something, but it's nothing to write home about. And I think the day is coming soon where there is no longer a thought of a hip in my head as I run. I'm very excited for that day.
That's brilliant. That is awesome. Daisy knows her freaking onions, doesn't she? That's amazing.
She does indeed. And I'm going to do a strength session tomorrow morning, which I'm assuming you're going to join me for.
Oh, what now?
A strength session tomorrow morning. You're going to join me for that?
Oh, strength. Yeah, I've got to get back to that.
Remember strength and conditioning. Yeah. Remember that thing that we used to do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get back on that wagon. Yeah. So a virtual strength session with you tomorrow morning. But I mean, let's not rabbit on about ourselves too much. We've got a really interesting guest this week, haven't we?
Oh my God. Yeah, we've got such a cool guest. It was a bit of a dream come true, actually, this hike and a chat with our next guest, because I've been dying to speak to her for months and months and months, ever since I discovered her back in the summer holidays. Yeah, so pretty fucking awesome. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, indeed. So let's strap on our hiking boots and get out on the trails with Sabrina Pace-Humphreys.
Let's do it.
Getting into it. This week, we are lucky enough to be joined by Sabrina Pace-Humphreys. Sabrina is a mum and grandma, an ultra runner, co-founder of Black Trail Runners, a podcaster, an author, host and presenter, and a contestant on this year's Survivor Series on the BBC, kicking off this weekend. A wildly accomplished person. Sabrina, did I leave anything out, or did that list cover it all?
That list covered almost all of it, you know. It was
almost.
It's you can have run coach, personal trainer, author, you know. Yeah, it's thank you so much. You know, it's so nice to hear the things that I've done and I'm doing listed so accurately. So thank you.
No worries. Well, how are you?
You know what? I am actually good. You know, when we're recording this, where are we? 2 days out from Survivor going live on the BBC. I've just got back from a run.
Nice.
With my dog. I've got a really nice day planned. On Thursday afternoons, I look after my grandson.
Oh,
wonderful.
So I pick him up from school, and then we just go and have granny and grandson time for the rest of the day. So I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling really good.
Love
Awesome.
that.
You've partially answered this question already, saying you've been out for a run. But as with every guest we have on the podcast, we like to start each interview off with, what have you done this week to get out in it?
So to get out in it this week, I have hiked, I have run, I have been on the spin bike. I haven't done as much out in it as I would normally, because I went over on my ankle on Saturday, which was an absolute nightmare. I'm just going into the last big training block before my 200 miles in December.
Oh, be careful with that ankle.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I've seen this physio last night. I've got really good physio, and it's not as bad as we thought it was. So yeah, it's strapped up and I'm bracing it. So yeah, I've got out in it a few times this week, and I'll be getting out in a lot more over the weekend.
Yeah,
nice. Nice. So, Sabs, I first met you in the cyberspace. Actually, it was in the summer while I was binge listening to back episodes of the Women's Running podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And you were on there and you were talking about this mental event, which I'd never heard about before. It was the spine race in the UK. And you instantly became like hero. Hero. And I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? So I immediately started doing a whole bunch of research, but like in a really cute fan way, not like in a creepy stalker way. And I found out about all of the stuff that you had accomplished over the last couple of years. And I was like, fucking hell. But I first of all want to talk about ultra running, because ultra running is something that I love. It's something that I do. And it seems to be quite a special sport that draws special kinds of people to it. So let's talk about ultra running. Why ultra running? Why do we love it? What is it?
I think for me, I had no idea what ultra running was for so many years. When I started running in 2009, I thought, 10K was just a really long distance. And I came to ultra running when I decided to get help for my addiction with alcohol. That was in 2016. And I kind of knew that in order to celebrate my 40th birthday, make it to 40 actually, I needed to focus on something that wasn't surrounded and shrouded in alcohol, partying, etc. And so my first sight of what an ultra run was actually, I was sitting at home one Saturday night and I was watching a documentary that was on the Discovery Channel, and it was of the Marathon des Sables, and it was James Cracknell doing the Marathon des Sables. And I was honestly, the look on my face, and I was like, why would anyone do that? Why? A, why would you run 250K? B, why would you do it in the Sahara Desert? C, why would you do it with like everything you own on your back? But when I finished watching it, there was, and I guess this is me, it's like when I did the spine race last year, when I decided to do it, there was something inside me that was like, I wonder if I can. I wonder if I can. And what I love about ultra running is how, for me, the release that I get when I'm out in it, when I'm out running, the mental headspace that I get, the time to work through the shit that is going on in my life, good and bad. I just found the longer that I have out there in it to do that, the better I am as a person. So therefore, for me, going long is like, my body was made to go long. My body is made, it is strong. I have really thick thighs. I have a big butt. My engine is huge, and I come into my own and can do super, super hard things when it comes to long distance running. I love it. There is no place other than with my grandkids and my kids that I would rather be than out on the trails running long for days.
So how did that go? So you sat there, you watched that documentary. When did you go for your first run? I mean, were you a runner of any kind at that point?
I was. So this was 2016 that I saw the documentary. So I had started running in 2009 after the birth of my fourth child. And the reason that I started running was I was severely postnatally depressed to the point of, kind of suicidal ideation. And I went for a postnatal check, as many mothers do. And I was so fortunate that a doctor asking me questions picked up very, very quickly that something really was not right. And that led to various strategies being employed, medication, talk therapy. And one of her suggestions was, why don't you try and get outside, get out in it and jog? Why don't you try jogging? And so I was a road run. So I started at zero, absolute zero, hated running, hated the thought of it, didn't see myself as a runner at all. And that led to that first run, as I talk about in the book, because I think it's really important for people to understand that I come from zero running, and not just zero running, like absolutely not seeing myself within that space at all. And I went from like a shuffle, as I call it, 1 minute walk, 1 minute shuffle. It wasn't a run. So it was all that journey from zero to marathon running on the road, always on the road, joined the, typical athletics club, and, again, kind of, only woman of color, kind of, no one that I could really relate to kind of within that space. But so no, in 2016, when I saw this documentary, I was like, that was my first foray into trail running. The first training run I did for the Marathon des Sables was my first trail run.
Wow.
And that was how I went from having that feeling of I wonder if I can, was that I then went and researched everything about the race, found out when the 2018 edition registration would open, watched everything I could, listened to everything I could, and I knew that I wanted to be coached. I'm a run coach. I believe in the power of coaching. I invested in coached by Elizabeth Barnes, who had won it a couple of times.
Wow.
So I was coached by Elizabeth for 18 months. And when I sat on my laptop, as I am today, for the registration to open for 2018, and got straight in there, and then emailed the UK organizer saying, am I in? And as soon as they said you're in, it was kind of like tunnel vision to train, to not get injured, to do everything I possibly could do in order to control the controllables to get to the start line.
Was that your first event? Because that's mental.
That was my first multi-stage 250k event. So I hadn't ever run an ultramarathon until I started training for Marathon des Sables. And as part of my training, Elizabeth we had found various UK ultras that would be my C&B races. So my first ever ultramarathon was Race to the Stones, which is quite a really nice entry level ultramarathon. It's very well organized, very kind of almost really beginner friendly. So I did the 100k, and I did it over the 2 days, so 50k a day with a stop overnight, because I wanted to replicate the Marathon des Sables experience. And I was kind of top 10 woman there. I couldn't believe it. Kind of your top 10 women over 2 days. And that was my first ever ultramarathon. And I just, honestly, I loved it. I loved the Ridgeway. I loved the aid stations. I loved everything about it. And I think when you find joy in it, the miles just don't feel like miles. They feel like meters. I say a lot, joy is an act of resistance. And certainly when it comes to long distance running, if you can find those elements of joy, it takes the pain away. And that's what I
so much.
love. That's what I love about long distance running, is finding joy in the process.
And the views. The views. I love the views.
I love a view. You'll constantly see on Instagram, I'm like, here's a view. Oh, isn't this beautiful? That's what I love about trail running. I love about ultra running is the fact that it's okay to take pictures. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's okay to share that experience is a massive part of what I do. And that's what I love about trail running, is just the views and the times when it's just you and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
When the doctor suggested you went running in 2009 to help with your postnatal depression, did you immediately start doing that? And how quickly, when you started running, this was before the trail running endeavor, did you start to see an improvement in your mental health through exercise?
It's funny because I procrastinated for a couple of days after she had said, why don't you try a jog? Because I was like, it's not me. Like, I'm 5 stone overweight after having the baby. The last thing I want to do is drag my overweight sorry ass outside. Like, how is it going to help me? So there were those thoughts, because I can be my own worst enemy at times, especially when I'm going through periods, because I still have episodes of depression and anxiety kind of fits and starts. And but a couple of days after she'd said that, I was so ill. I was so mentally ill. I was just like, I need to, if a doctor tells me to do it, then why am I not doing it? And so I went out, I put on an old baggy t-shirt and a painting t-shirt, which we all have, a pair of like baggy, really hot joggers, and an old pair of old school Dunlops that I had no kit at all, and a bottle of mineral water, Evian mineral water in my hand, and I went down to, I didn't even know it was a trail then, but I went down to the canal towpath because it was that place that no one would see me. I did not want to run on the road. And you know what? For 40 minutes, I did this 1 minute shuffle, 1 minute walk, and all I could think about was breathe, Sabrina, like breathe, don't hyperventilate, like breathe, Sabrina. Okay, don't fall in the canal, Sabrina, don't fall in the canal, keep one step forward, 1 step forward is even then 1 step forward will bring you closer to home, and that is all I thought about. And 40 or so minutes after, I kind of fell in the back door, didn't just step in. I fell in the back door, lying on my back on the kitchen floor, looking up to the ceiling like, oh my God, my body. Like, and my husband was like, are you all right? Are you okay? And you know what? I kind of looked up and I was like, I was in such pain, but I was like, I've just had 40 minutes of not having any thoughts about taking my own life. I've just had 40 minutes where, fucking hell, like on reflection, all I thought about was my body and where I was in that moment. Like, I hadn't had that for so long. My thoughts were dark thoughts about my place on earth, about my ability to be a mother, a wife, a businesswoman, to occupy the body that I was in. Like, I hadn't had that feeling of like just zoning in on where I was in that moment, and those dark thoughts not encroaching on anything for so long. I was like, oh my God, like I need this. From that moment, from that first run, the freedom of mind, the freedom from those dark thoughts that it gave me, I was like, this has to be something that I do again. And that God, that healing, that feeling that it gave me kept me wanting more than the dopamine hit. It was that feeling of like being present in my own body and not having those dark thoughts overtaking me. And that is what kept me going back when I was in pain, when it was like the DOMS, when it was, the days where it was just wet and cold. It was just like, it doesn't matter because I need this freedom. And that is what still to this day keeps me going back.
Kind of like forced active meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was absolutely forced active meditation, meaningful movement, movement that is about more than, we're, women and men. I think it crosses genders. We'll know, like, when running has taken me, especially in those early days, once I started to lose weight and once I started, when I joined the athletics club, running took a different turn and I had to kind of almost re-find it. And I've done that in the kind of in the last 10 years, but the freedom of headspace it gave me. And I think this is where it's really important, the communities you surround yourself with, because I think when you get into a more club culture, which I experienced, it becomes more about times, PBs, how lighter is faster. And I admit I fell into that, because once you get a bit of you start to get a little bit faster with your running, you start to compete in races. And then you think, I'm going to join a club because I want to surround myself with other people who do this. I think that you can become ensconced in that culture of that took me away from running for the mindfulness of it. It was about running. How fast can I get? How much stronger can I get? Who can I beat? Who can I, that competitive nature, which is a part of me. But I think that we have to be really careful that it doesn't become all about that. And I never wanted it to be all about that. So I think that, sorry, that's a really long-winded answer to your question, but I think that, I certainly went from that road running for mental health into road running and competing to see almost how much I could beast myself, to kind of that full cycle of finding trail running and the beauty and the love and the, like, this is the discipline that is for me. This is where I'm meant to be.
I think that's why, because I've only ever, I've done the Bristol half marathon a couple of times, but I've only ever done trail running. And I think for me, it's exactly that, because I come from a place of anxiety, which was from substance abuse and living at home with an alcoholic mother and stuff. So like for me as well, the trail running, so it was being out in nature surrounded by trees, because I love to run through forests and stuff. The movement and the freedom that gives you, because you are there that entire time, and because you're because we're ultra runners and we're running long distances, it's for hours and hours and hours and hours. You're just there in your body, and you're not thinking about this rubbish thing that happened in my childhood, or oh my god, that terrible thing I did when I was going through my substance abuse period. All of that's gone, because you're just going, look at that tree, it's amazing. And also, fuck me, I've done 40k and all of that kind of stuff, and it's so cool. It's such a release.
And don't get me wrong, like, I love, I think it's funny, isn't it? Because I think the longer that you go, the more time that you have with yourself in terms of that space. I've used running, especially when, since launching Black Trail Runners and since doing the book, I experienced a lot of trolling on the daily. And I find safety and solace in trail running. So I've done runs where I've been in tears for the whole of the run, and I've found a spot in the woods or on top of a hill, and I've just screamed, and I've screamed and I've cried but I felt so safe to do that. Whereas if I did that on a road, people would be like stopping, they would be like sending the police, they'd be like, this woman is having a breakdown. But the fact that the environments that I run in allow me to really express all that I am is really important to me as well, because I think that as a woman of color, there are certain kind of tropes that are associated with us, and I talk about it in the book, don't I? So even strong women, we bleed too. And I think that people almost, there's an expectation that kind of you can deal with so much, and therefore you kind of almost it feels as though we're not able to show it in the way that a more vulnerable personality might be able to. But that's why I talk so much about the ups and downs of my journey, because I want people to know that although I do these epic things and although I speak for these amazing causes, actually I bleed too. But what I love about my trail running is that I feel that I can really express myself wholly there and make no apologies for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, one of the things that I've learned, because again, coming from childhood where there's been trauma, and perhaps a young adulthood and adulthood where there's been substance abuse and stuff like that, you do kind of grow into your sort of middle age thinking, oh, I'm a bit shit. I'm a little bit rubbish. I can't do anything. I haven't achieved anything. I've got all of this bad stuff behind me that I've done. I've littered the world with all of my shit. But then actually you get out on the trails, and when you run your first ever distance, whether it's 1K or 100K, you suddenly go, fucking hell, my body's quite strong. I can't believe I can do this. And it's like, I don't know, for me, it was kind of almost instantaneous, this pivot of, holy shit, I can do stuff. And I'm actually quite physically strong. If I'm physically strong, maybe I'm also mentally strong. And I think that's what training for ultras and running ultras taught me as well, that actually, even though I can be quite sensitive to various things, I've also got quite a strong mind to push me through kilometer after kilometer after kilometer to get to the end, which is, it's very healing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, that it's just why I'm so keen to bring more people into kind of trail running and enable them to believe that they too can do hard things, whether that hard thing is a 5K, a 10K, or an ultra run, because I think that the impact that it can have on your life through the training cycle, through competing in race or doing challenges, I think that it expands into every aspect of your life.
Really?
And I think that the life that you've led, I say that one of the questions that I get a lot is like, where does the resilience come from? Like, how do you continue to move forward, things like that, etc., when you're broken? And I'm like, that's what I've done all my life. That's what I've done all of my life. My life almost is training for what I do now, because I've been broken time and time again, and dig to a deep well in order to move forward, to exist. And so therefore, in an ultra marathon where I choose to be there, it's a choice. Is it's not the hardest thing that I've ever done,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that leads quite nicely into the next little topic that I wanted to talk about, which was the founding of Black Trail Runners and Black to the Trails. And wasn't your first event in May this year?
Yeah. So our first flagship event was in May. So our oh God, it took so long. It was when we set up Black Trail Runners, one of the big campaigns we went out with was to talk about the massive lack of diversity in trail running. 4.5% of the UK population identify as Black or Black mixed, yet less than 0.7 of trail running entrants of races are Black or Black mixed. And so that, if that doesn't tell you there's a problem with diversity, I don't know what does. And we invited race organizers to join us in the sense of, number one, to commit to collect ethnicity data, because how can you know if there's a problem in your event if you don't know what the numbers are? Because a lot of them weren't asking and don't. Quite a few still don't ask questions about ethnicity.
Yeah, I've never been asked for any event. I've ever joined. Yep.
And that's number one. And number two, that we will collect that data, because no one was collecting the data to be able to see whether the work that they did was having an impact on that. And one of the things that a lot of race directors would say to us, or people, not just race directors, but brands, was, oh, but we've tried. We've really tried to engage with people of color. We've done it, just, it's not working. And what we said is we asked the hard questions, and it was, but how many people of color are like on your organizing team? How many people of color are your logistics? How many people of color are actually in charge of helping to create and curate your events? And the answer was 0. And there's always going to be a problem diversifying anything in life when you're looking at it through one lens. And often that lens is that of a white male gaze, especially within the sports industry. So we were just tired of hearing that. We know that if you want to bring community, if you want to bring different ethnicities into to anything, we're talking about trail running events, then you have to have people of color at that table. You know, you have to have people of color at the table. And you know what? We believe that people of color, the reason that they're not getting involved in trail running is because there are barriers that exist, and we know these, we live them, and we know that our community lives them, and that's to do with access, skills, and representation. So what we want to do is we want to show that if you address these barriers, that you can create an event that is truly diverse. And Black to the Trails this May, it took a year to organize by volunteers, trustees and members of Black Trail Runners. I led that team and was the first Black mixed race trail event director that the UK's seen. And Black to the Trails was the most diverse event, not just in the UK, in the world.
Amazing.
The most diverse trail running event in the world. It's 70% people of color. 15 out of 18 ethnic groups represented. 72% women.
Amazing.
So it just shows that when you really want to create diversity in one space, you actually create inclusivity in all the spaces.
Yeah, it's intersectional, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we standing there and watching the joy at Dunstable Downs National Trust we partnered with, because they know that they need to do more about diversifying their membership. So we worked with National Trust Dunstable Downs, and we had, DJs with music for our culture, food, carrying food for the culture. Even the artwork for Black to the Trails reflected a carnival vibe. I was race director, but I was also MC. It was
Love
it was just the most joyful experience. And to see members of your community, people that look like you and white allies who want to see a more diverse outdoors, come together in such joy of trail running. We had all of our events from 1K up to 10K, totally inclusive. People that had never, ever trail run before got involved in it. Old and young, pregnant women, grandmas. It was beautiful.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was historic, and I'm so glad that I was associated with something that will be remembered forever. And next year we're doing it again, bigger and better.
You can love
Amazing.
that. Definitely have to be back in the UK for that, because you
must. It's
so
honestly, it's so joyful, and it was a real moment. And we just wanted to show it can be done, like with intentional action, with the right people around the table. It can be done, and we showed that it can be done. And it's, we've got the data to show the results. It's sold out. People want these kind of events, and we're here for it. And I'm certainly here for it. It's a legacy, but it's also, it has to be sustainable. But we've seen other run crews, we've seen other community leaders that have started their own races, road races, kind of community events. So it's kind of, that leading the way and showing that it can be done leads to inspiring other people to know that they can do it as well. And that's a massive thing for me.
That's awesome.
No, go ahead.
I've always I've only been trail running for a couple of years, and I was always aware when I was training out on the trails, or if I was at the start line, that I was only one of very few women. And I obviously, that's because I am one, and that's kind of how I'm looking at the world through my feminist gaze. And it always did kind of surprise me that there were so few women out on the trails running where I was, and pretty much everybody I passed was a guy. But it wasn't until I heard your interview on the Women's Running podcast. I mean, I hadn't even considered diversity. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
Like all these events that I'd gone to over the last couple of years, and I'd stand up. I mean, obviously I was shitting my pants at the time. We're like in this world of, oh my God, I'm running a race kind of thing. So I wasn't really looking around. But since I've been looking, I did an ultra a couple of weeks ago. And I was at the start line. There was 176 people doing this ultra. I saw 2 black guys. That's it.
Well, Well, you saw 2 black guys. That's a lot more than you'll see at some ultras as well, you know. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, you know, we are who we are as people, and I think that, you know, being a woman and taking part in a lot of ultra races and being a woman, you know, so there are obviously always less women, and there's certainly always less women of color, or and that's just an intersectionality. That's just a data set that I've been so used to being in. But it is only when you step back and like, I ask these questions of people, you know, yeah, what was the last race you are? What was the representation of black and brown people? You know, what was the and it's like, oh yeah, you know, I didn't think about that, because, you know, you are who you are and I am who I am. So our gaze and our lens is different, but it's my job in order to create a truly globally representative trail running scene. You have to have those people that are kind of there to not just call it out, but actually to have the connections and have the experience to actually take action about it. So, you know, we know with the races that we work with that when they've put the work in and we've been around that table, that we can make change in terms of helping them to create more diverse races. But that representation isn't just in runners. As I've said before, it's the organizers, it's the volunteers, it's the photographer, it's the videographer, it's the person that's coming with the food van. It's all of those things, because people want to look around and see themselves represented in all spheres, to think, oh, well, maybe I can volunteer next time because there's someone that looks like me that's volunteering, or maybe I could actually, maybe there's a paid role in here for me, you know, maybe there's an opportunity. So I think that begets it's a virtuous cycle, you know. It begets one seeing someone in one role begets somebody thinking, oh, can I do something else, can I do that, can I run that, etc.
Trail running as a sport, it's very easy for the sport to respond, but with a sort of, oh, there are no barriers. You just sign up and you run and you go and do your event. We try and increase inclusivity, but you know, there are no barriers. But your event demonstrates that if you create the environment, you create the routes, you create, like you say, representation, then you can build a truly inclusive event. When you go and speak to the race directors and people involved with the sport, and they say, well, we've tried, what have they tried and what should they be doing?
Well, when they say they've tried, they maybe say they've put a black person on their website, you know, or and it's like, well, no, that's not representation, that's tokenism. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, and to be honest with you, when they say they've tried, they haven't tried. You know, they've maybe done something like put a black person on their website, or they spoke to a black person on the podcast that's associated with the race, or they've emailed a diverse community group saying, we'll give you a free space if you can promote our event to your members. That's not trying. That's just performative. It's performative. They haven't sat down. So when the biggest ignorant stance is when people do say, well, there are no barriers, all you need is a pair of trainers.
Yeah.
Because if it was that easy, you would have more women, you would have more people of color doing this sport. There are barriers. The barriers are there. The barriers are very, very clear to see if you want to see them. So if you want to continue, you know, an ignorant stance, which is like, well, there are no barriers, all you need to do is sign up to a race, right? Okay, let's talk about mandatory kit. Let's talk about the price of a pair of trail shoes. Let's talk about, if you have no idea what a pair of trail shoes even are, if you don't surround yourself with other trail runners, how would you know? And because that's about safety. You go out on the trails now, in a pair of road shoes, you're going to be on your ass in 5 minutes. You're going to be on your ass, you potentially hurt yourself. Okay, so when you hurt yourself, who do you surround yourself with that's a runner or a trail runner, if you're not in that community, that can tell you who to go to and see, how you would rehab that, how you come back from that? Like, that costs money. Physios cost money. I saw physio last night, half an hour, 40 quid. I'm in a position where I have privilege in the sense of the financial income that I have. But you've got to get into systemic, you know, you get very deep into, you get into systemic racism, institutional racism, and the fact that black people are paid less than white people. Like, all of these, financial access is a massive thing. Geographical access is a massive thing. You know, the majority of our population here in the UK as people of color are urbanized, and there's a reason for that. And we go back to the slave trade, transatlantic slave trade. and being brought over here as free men or enslaved people. So I can get into very deep conversations about why these barriers exist. Now, you're either the kind of person that will open your mind and say, now I get it. I get what stops members of your community who are living in London, Bristol, Birmingham, Liverpool, etc., in urbanized areas, because a train ticket costs £100 return. And then once they get there, if they don't have community, if they don't know the trail, what about if they don't know how to read a map? Let's go back to navigation, these skills so please don't come to me, and I'm quite strong on this. Like, please don't come to me if you don't have an open mind to actually really listen to and understand the barriers to access and skills and representation. And as I said, representation not just being, we'll put a Black person on the front cover of our website, like real representation in terms of consulting with communities like Black trail runners, as to, we want not just a picture of your member, but we want you involved in the organization of our events. Like, understand it and listen, and then the change can happen there. But if all you're going to do is come to me and or troll me and say you're creating, it's reverse racism, you're creating communities that are just for Black people. What about the white people? If we did, like, you're that for me, that's a closed off viewpoint, and change can't happen when you're not willing to. You can never put yourself in the spot of a community that has been marginalized. What you can do is you can open your mind to listen and say, you know what, I want to help make change here.
Yeah.
Show me, let me help you with the resources in order for you to do that, and me to stand by your side as you do that. And that's where change happens. And that's what we've seen with those those event organizers and brands who really are in it for the long-term work. If you're here just to sell a couple more tickets to Black people at your event as a one-off, then I'm not here for that. But if you're here because you really want to see change within our space and you're willing to put the resource into it, I'm totally here for that. And I'll hold your hand in it, and I'll bring you on board. But I'm a 45-year-old woman. Like, I know what it takes to make change. And if you're here for it, I'm here for it. But if you're here just to waste my time and ask me for a photo of myself to put on your website, I'm not here for that.
Do you think that the sport as trail running was looking outwards too much, as opposed to trying to move outside of the sport, looking inwards as opposed to saying, well, this is the route in, stepping outside of the sport and going, how do I get to that? How do I get into that sport? How do I get into that world?
Yeah, I think that what I've seen in, especially since launching Black Trail Runners, and the daily conversations that I have, is that there's a real reticence to actually look inwards. Because the change has to happen. If the change isn't there internally, if you're not, as a CEO or COO or a marketing director, if you're not looking at your team first and foremost, and you're not saying to yourself, we have no representation here. If you're not looking at the people that you use as suppliers, photographers, graphic design, and if you look at that and you think, we don't have representation of a global running community, if you're in running or in sports or whatever, you got to start internally before you start going out and trying to engage with an audience that isn't even represented within your business. And that's what I talk about. The representation matters. It matters across the board. But to do the work properly, if you're not looking at ourselves as individuals, and then the teams and the communities we stand around ourselves with, and saying, okay, I got work to do here before I start trying to get more sales of product or trying to get more entrants at my event who are people of color, because those people of color aren't even represented here. That, I think, the industry, especially in 2020, I don't know if you can remember Black Square Tuesday. I mean, it was when many brands came out and they were like, hey, we'll hold our hands up. You know, we need to do better, be better. And much of it was performative. Because what's happening now with those organizations, with those people, is that almost they believed it was a trend. So therefore they're cutting back budgets for you know, equity, inclusion initiatives. They're getting rid of people that hold those titles, kind of community managers, you know, looking at how to really create more so we're seeing a lot of resources being cut, because it's almost like, oh well, that was then and this is now. And this is our lives, this is our everyday lives, this is something that isn't a trend, it's not a square, it's not, you know, it's not a moment, it's like an everyday thing, because our people, our communities, our sport must, you know, the route to really being representative is to continue to address that problem, and that's the barriers that exist for marginalized groups in getting access to the outdoors.
Yeah. And putting a picture of someone on a website is not actually helping that community in any way.
No, it's tokenism, and it's tokenism, because what happens, and it's creating an unsafe environment, because what you're seeing is that, you know, maybe you have a person of color that has stumbled across that website and they see this photo of the black person, they're like, okay, all right, okay, so this is a diverse event. They go there and they're one of a couple of black people there. So you've got to understand what messages that you're sending, what you want to have, okay, what you want to have. And I think, you know, events like Maverick, for example, who we've been working with for years, do it well, and they see the results of the work that they've done, the real work that they've done, in the sense of, you know, members of Black Trail Runners will go to an event because we work closely with Maverick. You know, we work on, you know, organization. You know, we are supported by Adidas Terex as Black Trail Runners, so they support Maverick as well. So over the years, we've worked to create a kind of inclusive event and go with our members to that event, to build confidence so that our members will go on their own. And then over time, more and more of them go, and they shout about how great the event is, how inclusive it is, how welcoming, how they feel represented there, how volunteers there are black people as well. And then that then leads in turn, is when Maverick take race photos of their event, it's people of color at their event, and it's not just one, it's many. So therefore that can be used in their marketing. And then people of color that go there and they're like, oh, it is really like this.
It's a reflection of reality rather than a model that's been paid to be on a website. Yeah,
that's it. So I think that I think there's been various discussions over the years about the difference between kind of, you know, that tokenistic view, the performative view, and the real work. And I'm here, and I'm here for the real work, you know, because we know that it works. We know that if you put the resource time in, and if you take on board the views and the lived experiences and the expertise of people that are doing this work, then you too can have the results which you ultimately seek, which is more diverse events.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, it's a completely different thing, because I'm talking kind of gender. There's a running club in the village just next door to me. I live in France, just outside of Lyon, and there's one running club near me. It's the village next door to me, and it's quite small, but it's guys, and it's a trail running club. And I've been put off joining because I don't want to be the only woman running off into the woods with a bunch of guys. I just don't feel safe. I'm sure they're lovely guys. I'm sure they're all super nice people, but the lack of confidence, because I feel like I wouldn't feel safe if I went running off for a couple of hours with a bunch of guys I don't really know. And so I can kind of use that kind of gender lens to understand a little bit how a person of color would feel, especially coming to a place like all of these villages where I live, where all of my trails are. They're pretty fucking white. Not gonna lie, you know. So I can understand that it would be such a massive barrier if someone were to come to these trails and be like, fucking hell, everybody's white. So I get it. I get that sense of insecurity and that lack of confidence that could arise just just by looking at all of the people who were there and go, yeah, you're white, you're white, you're white.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, don't get me wrong, like I've lived this, I grew up in a town where I was the only black kid here for years. As you read in the book, I experienced racism every single day. So my lived experience is being othered or being one within a sea of faces that didn't look like mine. So therefore, when I came to trail running, it was exactly the same. I'm like, oh. And it wasn't until 2019 where I talk about in the book, the chapter Snowblind, where I was running in the Alps. I just started getting into mountain running and, had slipped off the side of a snowfield and was screaming for my life.
Bit traumatic. Yeah.
A vertical drop.
Fucking hell.
And 5 white trail runners ran past me as if I was invisible, as if as if I wasn't there, as if they couldn't hear my screams. And it was, thank the Lord for the 6th guy that went past me, who was a brown-skinned Italian, couldn't speak English, I couldn't speak Italian, but just by human contact and him wanting to save my life, he pulled me off the side of that ledge. And that started this chain reaction for me, in the sense of, I've been occupying these spaces again in trail running where, as a woman of color, I didn't see myself represented. But actually, I'd never been in a situation in trail running where I thought I was going to die. And as humans, we're taught, and especially in trail running, you are told in the, you're told in like the pre-race briefings, if you see someone that's hurt, you see someone that's down, stop. You will not be penalized. You will not be penalized. Your time, it can be made up, but stop and help. And the fact that I was in a space and I was screaming for my life, and these men ran past me, it triggered me in ways that I haven't been triggered for in a while. And it very much, for 6 to 9 months after that, made me question whether this was for me. And that was 2019, and that took me into 2020, and wanting wholeheartedly to find a community of people that included people that looked like me, who loved trail running, in which I could feel safe. Because I live in the Cotswolds, and I'll be out on the trails, and people, if I stop to do up my laces or to get something out of my bag, people will ask me, like, are you lost? Are you lost? As if, and that might sound like, well, they're just asking if you're lost. But when you are a person of color navigating the outdoors, there's a certain look, there's a certain unconscious bias. The whole "are you lost?" is because you don't look like somebody that I see here. So are you supposed to be here? And my response is, no, I'm not lost. Are you lost? I know exactly where I am, who I am, and where I'm going. And these places belong to me just as much as they do you. And it when it happens time and time and again, it becomes incredibly frustrating. But then you have to be careful not to fall into the narrative of being the angry Black woman. So it's the fact that we're not seen out in these spaces enough, and that's something I'm trying to work on, is part of that story. It's safety. It's if something happens to me, because after that incident in the Alps, my mountain training ground that's local to me is the Brecon Beacons. And I would tie myself in knots, making myself seem more palatable to every person running or walking by me, because I was so fearful that if I was in trouble, I wanted them to at least like me a little bit so that they would help me. And it's so energy draining, having to constantly make yourself more palatable for the to make other people feel comfortable being around you, and it's in it. But ultimately, out of trauma comes sometimes beautiful things, and that's what led me to Black Trail Runners. It's what led me to try and find Black Trail Runners, and it didn't exist. It wasn't there. There was no community in trail running that was about, first and foremost, creating community for Black people via trail running in the outdoors. So it wasn't there, and I created it.
Love it.
Which is amazing.
I love that you've created it, and I love that the event that you had was so successful, and long may that continue and grow, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it will. I mean, Black to the Trails, it was our biggest event, but we've been having events, smaller scale trail taster days that we've been having since early 2021. So those are days where free of charge for a whole day, our members of our community can come, and half a day will be working on the barriers to access. So it might be skills, it might be a map reading 101, it might be kit, it might be nutrition, it might be how to run. And then the second half of that day, we all go out trail running together. You know, so we pay for members of Black Trail Runners to be qualified run leaders and run coaches, because again, representation matters. You know, we don't have enough trail running coaches of color. So, you know, we have a fund that we upskill, we educate, we give them the qualifications. You know, we have funds that are around, you know, financial, you know, if you cannot afford to enter a race, you know, that we almost have a no questions asked. You know, we know that that's a barrier to access. We're going to help you there. We have a kit loan scheme. You know, if you need kit, mandatory kit, we have kit that we can loan to you. You can test, etc. So we've done, since we launched, we've done everything that we can in order to make that transition into trail running, or to run longer on the trails, as safe and as barrier less as can be for our community members.
Nice. Do you think you'll ever do a Black to the Trails Ultra?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, this year for 2024. So we had 3 race distances last year. We had like a 1K kids race, or a 1K for adults that just wanted to sample it. We had a 5K and a 10K. And this year, when we asked our entrants questions about what they wanted, you know, things they wanted differently, a few of them said, oh, it'd be good to have another distance. And we want to make it, still continue to make it inclusive. So what we've done is we've added what we're calling our extra spicy 10K. So this is a 10K with significantly more vertical elevation than we had for our other 10K.
Love it.
So that's what we're doing. We don't want to scare off people, but we do want to say, okay, if you want a little bit more of a challenge, here's something else we can give you. So absolutely, one day there's going to be a Black to the Trails Ultra. I'm here for that, definitely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, I want to talk about your booking in a minute, because it's breaking my heart on a daily basis at the moment, and I need to know that things are going to get better. But before we do, I would just touch on something you mentioned a minute ago, where you said a lot of the brands considered this a trend and are cutting back on budgets for various things. And that leads into a question that I wanted to ask, which is, do you feel like we're moving in the right direction? Because sometimes it does, but often, you know, at the moment, it's something I think about a lot is, you know, we've got the sort of the resurgence of the right wing, the demonization of the word progressive, the demonization of the word woke, even things like when the most recent Little Mermaid film and the outcry that came out because of the casting for that. And it gets me down. It gets me down so much. I can't imagine what it would be like looking at that from a marginalized community. Do you feel like we are moving in the right direction, or do you think that we might be stagnating or even falling backwards?
I think that, you know, I talk about the cycle of apathy. So there's a cycle of apathy, and basically it's a cycle, and I might not get all of the sections right, but we're in a period at the moment, I think, just, you know, as the human race, and certainly within, you know, the running sector, of like the one step back. So we've taken some steps forward, and we're in that an apathy state where, you know, we had the horrific incident in 2020. Let's talk about Black Lives Matter. We had the horrific incident, the murder of a Black man that everyone saw, because we were in a, you know, everything came together at one point. We're in lockdown. People were only allowed out for a couple of minutes a day. So therefore, you know, you see this horrific thing on social media. And so that we had the horrific thing happen. And then you have, in terms of the cycle of apathy, you have what can we do? What can we do? So that was like Black Square Tuesday. We need to do better, be better, etc. What can we do? And then you have some of that work being done. You have a bit of action around that, you know? And then you have frustration, because brands, organizations aren't necessarily seeing the results or the sales or the take up that they want. So there's frustration. All right, there's frustration around it. And then you get into a period of like apathy. It's like, oh, well, we've tried, we put stuff into it, it hasn't given us the quick fire results that we wanted to see, so like, what's the point? What's the point? And then you have this horrible period that we're in at the moment, which is kind of almost a step back, like anger, like, well, we tried, it didn't work, and so what's the point? We're not not doing it. So you have ED&I roles being made redundant. You have the more trolling, you have division, you have the word woke being being demonized, you have the right and the left, and everything you see happening in the world, I always see running as a microcosm of that. So for example, you can look at Runners World UK at the moment, and on their Instagram channel, you look at Strava, and we work with these people, so they're quite good at monitoring, although the Runners World UK at the moment needs to be monitored more. But you have people like me talking about how to make a truly diverse running scene, and we're talking about all ethnicities, white, black, brown, etc. How if you're inclusive if you're inclusive in one space, it spreads, it breeds inclusivity in others. But then you have the trolling, and this trolling, yes, some of it you see, which is public, but also I know that a fellow activist of mine, who's an American activist called Alison Desir, she was at the USA Trail Conference last week or the week before, and she was invited onto a panel in a room with people that were invited there. One of them being one of the race organizers for Western States, who she has called out, Western States Endurance Run. She called out in the past about their lack of diversity, their lack of inclusivity, their lack of representation. And within that room, it became a hostile environment. It became a them and us. It became a, well, look, Western States had said we had 2 Black people take part in our race, and they wanted to be congratulated for that. So we have this, certainly have, I believe we're in a period of apathy. We're in a period where people are batting up against the work that is being done and saying, but we've done it. We should be congratulated for it. Why are you not congratulating us for it? It's like, this is an ongoing action. This isn't like a trend. This isn't, oh, we've done it and now we can move on. So I think that, unfortunately, I see it as a one step back. But if anything, it is in these moments that it's more important to be doing this work, to show that we are here. The work continues. This is what can happen when you put the work in. And what are you going to do? Wait for the next horrific incident to take place. Because that ultimately, in the cycle of apathy, is what happens. You get to apathy, you get to them and us, and then the horrific incident happens. Now, whether that horrific incident happens next week, next year, or in 10 or 20 years, it will happen again, and this whole cycle will continue. It will cycle round again. But I'm here for the spaces and to work in the spaces where it's really, really important to continue to hear the voices, not just on the Black Square Tuesdays, not just in the rise of Black Lives Matter, not just in the trend, not just in the Black History Month. I'm here to be a voice in the times when actually sometimes it feels like you are a lone voice in this space. And but you have to continue to use your voice for change.
That's really interesting, actually, because James and I were talking about it the other day. Like, what can people like James and I do, like on the ground every day, just living our lives? What can we do to help? Is there anything we can do to help?
I think absolutely. I think use your voices, and don't feel fear in standing up for those that are the marginalized. And I'm not just talking about running. I'm talking about in life. People need our help. We look at what's going on over in the Middle East at the moment.
Yeah.
Look at the lack of people using their voice in order to speak their truth. And the reason that they're not using their voices for that is they're fearful about what they could lose influencers, whether it's on deals, money. All I do is I look at what's going on in the world. I watch the news. I digest content from places that people would not go near to really understand what is happening, and I use my voice to ask for help, to humanitarian help on that, because I don't give a shit about losing deals. I don't give when it comes to a human life. Ultimately, when I'm on my deathbed, and I say this all the time, I want to look back on my life and know that I've used it for good. And all the money in the world, doesn't make you happy. I was a very successful businesswoman. I ran a PR agency for 16 years. I was at the top of my game. I was financially really, really stable, and I wanted to take my own life. Do you know what I mean? And none of it matters. I had a conversation on my own podcast with a woman called Dora Ateem the other week, and she was talking about the youth work that she did, and that, when you're in a room with someone who is fighting for their life, whether it's that they've got a court case coming up, whether it's because they're worried that their family are going to be made homeless, isn't it our duty as human beings to be a voice for the voiceless? So I think that when you have privilege, when you have power, whether that power is a podcast or whether it's a voice within an industry that can help to make change, use it. If you see someone being trolled, don't just walk on by. If you see something online and you think, I don't agree with that, what are you scared of losing for being an ally to those people? For example, you said that you were a race and you saw two black men there. What I say to white allies is, I say, if you look around at the events you go to, if you look around and you think, wow, there is a lack of females or there is a lack of diversity here, go to the event organizer and say, what are you doing? What are you doing in order to diversify your events? And if their response to you doesn't feel good, if it's point them in Black Trail Runners, say you need to talk to Black Trail Runners. You need to talk to Sabrina Pace-Humphreys at Black Trail Runners. You need to engage with communities that are out there doing the work, because you're obviously, you're something's going wrong in the sense that I don't see, as a white woman, I don't see as a white man, a global community represented here. So ask, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, and don't be fearful that you might not have the answers, but you certainly know where you can direct people to people that do have the answers and are doing the work. So I know that it's scary, and I know that there is fear about getting it wrong. That's what I hear from people all the time. We're scared we're going to get it wrong. Rather get it wrong than have no voice at all.
Yeah.
I've learned some of the biggest lessons in my life from failing, from getting it wrong. I've learned the biggest lessons in my life, and that I think that applies to everyone. So I think, support communities, elevate communities and people who are doing the work, but also, don't ask them to labor for you. Go out, do your research, watch the stuff, listen to the podcasts, read the articles, and help them to amplify. Be that voice in a room where they're not there, amplify for them when they're not there. It's what I do for people. If I don't have the answers, and I don't have the answers to many things, I'll say, you know what? I'm not the best person for you to speak about this. You need to speak to such and such. This is how you get a hold of them. Be that voice for them, because this stuff's energy draining, isn't it? It's so energy draining, and I know that I can't do it alone. So I rely upon the people that I meet to be those voices, or to guide people in direction to the content which will answer those questions. Lots and lots of content out there that answer the questions that people will often say, all it takes is a pair of trainers. Well, why don't you go and watch the talk that I did at Strava in California this year about why it actually takes more than a pair of trainers? I mean, that was the title of the talk, Unlocking Access to Equitable Movement, why it takes more than a pair of trainers. So, the information's out there if you want to seek it and use your voice.
Thank you very much.
I think steering people to read your book would be a very good first step as well.
Yeah.
In terms of an understanding, trying to gain some sort of understanding. As I said to you before we started recording, I'm currently reading your book and it is breaking my heart every day. Riz finished it. How was writing that book for you as an experience?
It was, oh God, it was a deep experience, you know, accessing memories and reliving, and it was a reliving of experiences of each chapter is a experience in my life, from being a very, you know, from before I was born, how my mother and father met and the racism that she encountered and being ostracized from her home country because she fell in love with a black man, and how that impacted upon my early life, being away from, you know, being away from family and my relationships with my grandfather, for example. It was hard, you know, and you know, I started writing it in, you know, God, when I got the book deal in 2021, and I'd already written a couple of chapters to get the book deal, and I had to unlock that Pandora's box. You know, those things we hide away.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a lot of therapy, but still, there are just things that are so deep, and feelings I had about those things. You know, feelings I had about that little girl who just wanted to be seen. You know, and being, you know, being the only black kid in the town, and putting yourself up, you know, putting your, you know, a shy little girl up front to try and be seen, and it not necessarily working out the way she wanted it to. She dreamed that it would, and I was that little girl again. You know, writing the book, I was her again, and I re-experienced, because I wanted the book to be as authentic as possible, and I wanted people to be on that journey with me. And, you know, from that first experience to, you know, to don't touch my hair, you know, that you know, that you might not be at, about, you know, trying to, as a teenager, trying to again fit in and living in a rural town. And it was so important for me to tell that story of what it is to be a person of color in the rural space, because there were no books on that. There are no books on that. And then going into, you know, adulthood, and you know, the teenage mum stereotype, you know, dealing with people, you know, thinking that, oh my God, she's pregnant at 17, like she's going to make nothing of her life, she's going to be, you know, income support benefits, you know, what kind of life they're going to have, and having to deal with the tropes around that, and fight against that. And, you know, the time when I was, you know, as I talk about, you know, that depression, that deep depression that I was in, and having this baby who, you know, at times I didn't want her near me. That's where my depression took me. I didn't want to feed her. I couldn't understand why I didn't have this connection. And anyone that has experienced episodes of depression will, I don't even have to say it for you to know that, you know, when those devils are on your shoulder and it's all you can do just to keep going, you know. And, you know, alcoholism, and, you know, when I realized I needed help, and just, you know, those moments, that moment of darkness on the bar, you know, I had to go back there and relive it. And it was one of the hardest things to do, to open up that Pandora's box. But I knew that I needed to do it in order to create a work that I was proud of, and that even if it only ever stood alone as that one book, that it would be the book that I had to write. And wow, when I saw it, and I saw that the cover, that, you know, I selected lots of photos, and they chose the cover photo, which is a reflection of a hopeful part of the book. And I saw her, and I saw that little girl, and I was like, oh God, like, this is for you. Like, this, it's all really been for her, because, you know, I still, you know, when I do that work, I do that therapy work, like, she's still there, and she still needs love and care, and she, all the things I try and be now to myself and to be other people, really, it's all I ever really wanted for her. Community, to be seen, to feel as though your voice matters, that your experience matters, you know, to never be othered, never be alone, always feel as though you have someone that is going to be the voice for you when you are voiceless. And I'm immensely proud of the book. And I only ever wrote the book. And when I was writing the book, I was like, even if it just helps one person, if one person sees themselves in it and thinks, you know what? Wow, I feel that. I am that person. I was that person. And I see myself reflected in that. And there's hope. There's hope, like, you know, what I continue to do now, job done. And from the moment the book was launched, I had that. From the moment that the book was launched, the moment it was out there, I had DMs. I had people come up to me at events in the street and say, this book I feel seen. This book has helped me to start to address some of my stuff. And I could not be prouder. Like, I could not be prouder of what I got through in order to get it out there, and what it still gives people, and what it will continue to give people.
Absolutely, because it's out there now. It's out there forever and ever. Yeah. And there's something, as somebody who's also had various psychiatric and psychological help throughout her life, and as somebody who also writes books, there's something deeply intimate about writing that isn't matched in talk therapy.
Absolutely.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it, because a lot of my deepest, darkest things come out. I write science fiction and fantasy, and a lot of my darkness comes out in those kind of fantastical stories, which is very cathartic. I find it super cathartic. But I can't even imagine what it would be like to actually sit down and write what happened on a daily basis from some of the darkest moments in my background. I just so I can imagine how hard that would have been for you.
Yeah, it was. And I think going into it, I really underestimated. When I wrote it, we were having a massive house renovation done as well.
Oh God.
So we'd left like our family home of like 11 years where we raised all of our children, and we got it to exactly the state we wanted it in. And then Sabrina had a great idea that, you know, it was time to downsize a little bit. Then moved into a house and decided she needed to upsize. And so I was going through a phase where it was just, life was just incredibly topsy-turvy, and Black Showrunners was growing, and to have to deal with that as well. Kind of, if I knew before I started it what I did, I probably wouldn't have started it at that time. But life happens, you know, and it's memoir writing is, it is. I've talked to a lot of people that have written memoirs, and it is a process, and it can really break you. I'm just grateful that I got through it, and I delivered a piece of work that does what I wanted it to do. And my second book, actually, that's out there for submission at the moment, is not a memoir. It's more research orientated, and very much looking at a lot of the issues that we've discussed today.
Nice.
Which is around, you know, Black people of color in the countryside, the history of that, kind of how this segregation has happened, how we seek to address it, like real life stories of people out there, you know, getting out there. And I'm just really hoping that it gets picked up, because it's the natural second book, and I really want to be the one to get it out there. So fingers crossed.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I'm so excited. Do you have a working title for it?
The working title, the working title is actually Black to the Trails.
Is it? Oh, I love that. Brilliant. That's perfect.
Yeah,
that's absolutely perfect.
That, but it's just it's the natural next book. It's the book that everyone's like, oh God, you know, you got to do a book on trail running, and I'm like, yeah, but it has to be more than a book on trail running.
Yeah.
It has to feed into those issues around the work that I do. So it's kind of it's history. It's how can we address the history, and then it's using the expertise, the community, and the expertise that I have in terms of, okay, you want to try this? Here's how you can go about it as well.
That's nice. And then that's another resource that people like James and I can use if we go to these events and they're super whitewash. We go, look, read this book, and then sort yourselves out, and then do a bigger event next year.
That's it.
We need it. Yeah.
We need it, you know. And I look around at publishing, and you know, Black people and people of color in publishing. That's a whole different podcast. But it's not there. You know, that book isn't there, and I want to be the one to write it. And I'm at the time in my life where I've got the expertise and the skills to write it, so why not? So yeah, we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks.
Amazing.
Sounds like the perfect follow-up to a fantastic first book, which I'm, as I said, I'm reading it. Well, actually, I'm listening to it. You're reading it to me at the moment.
Oh my gosh, that was hard.
Yeah, I bet it was.
I bet the reading of it was insane.
You said that the writing was hard and the reading was hard, but for you, was it a cathartic experience?
Yeah, in a lot of ways it was. I think in a lot of ways, with the knowledge that I have now, the life that I've lived and that I live, I think that I understood a lot more around my inability to cope. Why? There's a lot that I didn't put in the book. People are like, oh my God, you've really laid yourself out in this book. I'm like, that's 25% of it. It's so much that I didn't put in there because it was too much. But it was a cathartic experience, and also even the acceptance and kind of forgiveness in the sense of for example, the people that bullied me for years and years and years, and understanding in terms of, because those people still live in my town. I still, all the names have changed, but I still see those people, and for some of those people it's like this absolute non-acceptance of the part that they played, and there was a lot of deeper understanding in terms of potentially what they were going through in their lives as well, because there has to be an element of acceptance and some forgiveness as well. So I think that yeah, it was a cathartic experience. And I even with my relationship with my mother, sitting down with her and for the first chapter and really taking time to understand her story, I kind of thought I knew it. I thought I knew what went on, but speaking woman to woman about how she felt happened, the relationship breakdown with my own father, and the impact that then that had on me ongoing, but actually the impact it had on her in her coping as well, and where that took her. I think there was a real strengthening of relationship even with my own mother. That's really important for me. It's a really important part of the process. So yeah, it was in a sense a cathartic experience as well, but one that I'm in no hurry to go through. People are like, oh well, is there a second second memoir? I'm like, look, let this first memoir do its work, and I'll do other books, and then who knows, in 20 years
30 years time, when you've racked up many more
That's
races and adventures, and Black Trail Runners is gargantuan, and the sport is truly diverse. That's when we'll look for that second one. But what I want to, before we let you go, you're doing a 200-mile race in 7 weeks.
Yeah, which is mental, Sabs. What the fuck?
I know. Well, when I was filming Survivor, I was due to be doing 100-miler. So Centurion Running are a race event organizer who since day one have supported Black Trail Runners, and I've always wanted to do one of their races. So I was due to do their South Downs Way 100 in the summer, and I couldn't do it. I was training for it. I had to pull out because the Survivor opportunity. Well, I was told I kind of had to go, and I'd been picked and everything like that. And then I was like, I love my trail running, but I'm also a very goal orientated person. So when I got back, I was like, I've got to do something. And I knew Survivor would be coming out around about this time of the year. And I knew that I wanted to be training for something that would just take me out for hours and hours and hours away from social media, away from everything. And Centurion launched the Winter Downs 200, which is this 203.5 mile continuous foot race around the southeast of England, taking in 5 different ways. So the South Downs Way, North Downs Way, Wayfarers Way, Vanguard's Way, and St Swithin's Way. You get 96 hours to do it if you want that whole time. And I was like, that's the race I've got to do. That's the race.
That's gonna be amazing.
That's gonna be epic.
It will be epic, but you know what? The thing that will make it very different from the Spine race, which I did last year, which was 268 miles, is almost 18 hours of this race is going to be in the dark, because it starts December the 13th. Whereas when I did the Spine,
it makes my ankle twitch.
We literally
thinking of running in the dark.
I know, but we literally had like 5 hours of darkness when we did the Spine, because it was like Midsummer's Day. It was around that. So yeah, December in the UK on trails in the dark.
It's going to be glorious. You'll get bright,
It's
crisp
gonna be
sunshine.
amazing.
It'll be amazing.
That's
I know.
amazing.
Oh, it's
And
going
what
to
the
shit it down.
perfect-
It's going to shit it down for 96 hours.
It
You know
is,
that, don't you?
isn't it? Isn't it? You know that. You know that.
But what a fucking awesome way to start the Christmas season, though. Oh my God.
Boom.
That's amazing.
That last 3
I can't
miles is going to be
wait.
glorous. Once you cross that
Oh my
200-mile
God.
mark, you're going to get this amazing third, fourth, fifth wind and just fly.
It. I'm going to be. It's like one more park run to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I've dealt with Achilles tendonitis as part of this training block. I've said, I went over on my ankle on Saturday. I thought that was just horrific, but actually it's not as bad as I thought it was. I've got another, peak of a progressive 4 weeks, and then we're into the taper. And you know what? I'm just gonna go out there and keep my why close by and do my thing. It'll be time out in the trails, away from everything, moving one foot in front of the other. Joy. Absolute
joy. Yeah, love that. So Sam, I've got one more thing to ask you, because I love your podcast. Love it. I love it. I save up all of the episodes and then I listen to them. I binge them on my long runs on Sundays.
Fantastic.
That's how I do it. And I love how at the end of every single episode, you ask all of your guests, because your podcast is called Fabulous. Which is fabulous. And you ask all of your guests what it is that makes them fabulous. So I want to ask you, Sabs, what is it about you that makes you fabulous?
Oh my God, what makes me fabulous? I think, it's the joy and energy. I think that is what people say, like when I'm doing my thing and I bring it, and I'm bringing it 100% with all of my authenticity and my passion. It's the energy, that enthusiasm for when I'm in that zone, when you're doing it and you're like, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. This is exactly what I'm meant to do. When I ran the PR agency, when I used to win business, the big reason people used to say I would win their business was like, my God, like you talk about our brands, you make us want to buy our own products. So what are you? And it's like, I've always had, if I love something and if I believe in it, I can sell ice to Eskimos. And so it's, for me, being fabulous is joy and energy and just infusing that into everyone around me to make them have their own joyful, energetic moments. That is what makes me fabulous.
Authenticity, eh?
Yeah. And joy. Yeah.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
Perfect answer. Thanks, Abs.
Sabrina, every guest we have on at the end of every interview, we ask them if they can give us a song to go on the Get Out in It playlist on Spotify, something you train to, enjoy, run to, or just generally uses to motivate you.
Oh my God. Right. Well, I have to say this, don't I now? Survivor's going to be on the television on Saturday night. So I would have to say Destiny's Child and Survivor.
Oh, amazing.
Because that is like constantly in my mind at the moment. And yeah, definitely. I mean, I love Beyonce. She's a queen. And I love everything about her, about what she does, about how she lives her life. Big fan. And I could have named lots of Beyonce songs, but for now, right now, it's Survivor, Destiny's Child.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect timing.
So if anybody wants to find you, find out about what you're about, get in touch, reach out, get involved, or watch the Survivor thing that's coming up this weekend, where do they look?
I think the best place to find me, to really experience an authentic me, would be via Instagram. So yeah, I'm Sab Runs Miles, or Sab Runs Smiles on Instagram. And from there, you can click on my link in bio, which will take you to my website, various articles that I've written, podcasts, etc. So I think from the Instagram profile, you can kind of get to everything there. Or yeah, online, sabrinapace-humphreys.com.
Amazing. I've been on your Instagram many times. I've always read it as Sab Runs Smiles.
Sab Runs Smiles. Yeah.
I didn't see it the other way.
That's the great thing about the handle. You can take it either ways.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Come true, Sab. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. Is exactly what I needed.
Oh, it's been
Show you my face now.
Yeah, there you are. Oh, you're so gorgeous. Thank you so much for all of this time, for being really brutally honest about absolutely everything and answering our questions and everything. Oh, thank you so much. I was so scared. Like when James and I were having a little bit of a chat beforehand, I was like, oh my God, we're going to talk to Sam. I was so nervous, but you're lush. You're so lush. So thanks, Sam.
It's honestly like I could cry. It's just so nice to be on a podcast with people that actually, you know, I've done a lot of podcasts, and some podcasts I go on to, like, they've got no idea, like maybe just seen something, and it's just really nice to speak to people that actually have some idea as to who I am and what I do. Do you know what I mean? I think that's really, really important in order to get that great conversation flow going. So thank you. I'm glad I didn't disappoint.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
We'll be watching you at the weekend, and I will continue to stalk you on Insta, as is my want. Yeah.
I look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. The debrief.
The emphasis was correct, I feel.
Okay.
So, Maria Herring, you're quite a fan of Sabrina. You've followed her for some time. I enjoyed that interview a lot. You did a fair amount more of the talking than I did. And I think that's
sorry about that.
No, it's a good thing. It's
I was
because
so excited to
you come from a real position of understanding her background, and I'm only partway through the book, and you finished it. So, you know. So what did you think of that chat?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was so cool to talk to Sabs, because I love her podcast. I've read her book. I follow her on Insta, and she's just, oh my gosh, she's just a force of nature. Like, it's extraordinary, the ultra runs that I know she's done a lot of other things, but the reason why I started following her was because she was she's an ultra running maniac, and I loved that. So she's a force of nature, all of the races and events that she's done. And then when you add on top of that all of her activism and everything that she does, she's amazing. She's just amazing. And so to have a long, because we were talking to her for ages, it was amazing. And she was so kind to give us all of that time. Oh, yeah, it was brilliant. It was a dream come true.
Yeah, it really was. And the time flew by. And I said to you afterwards, I could have just kept talking to her for another few hours, because there was so much to say, you know, and there's so much to learn as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, and like you said in the interview, both of us are struggling to read that book, not because it is a badly written book or anything like that. It's a fascinating read, and it's a really incredible book. But it's heartbreaking, and I need to get to that hope bit, because, and a reflection of how me and you were struggling to read it, that was her life, like you said in the interview. And so there's a lot of change that needs to be made, and a lot of education and understanding that needs to be out there. Because, like I said in the interview to her, to stimulate that conversation it's very easy for an ecosystem like the running community to say, what are you talking about, barriers? You know, just get a pair of running shoes, pay your money to do the race, and off you go.
I mean, we've even, you and I have even said that on the podcast, you know, barriers to running, there are none. Grab yourself a pair of trainers and just get out there.
Yeah, we said that not in relation to inclusivity, though, more of an ease of access to exercise. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so, but as she outlined so eloquently for us, there are so many barriers out there. And certainly when it comes to looking at an ecosystem like trail running and seeing people like you doing it as a first step, or seeing an environment at a race venue which is welcoming to you and you feel at home in, and you feel like you fit there, that as a first step is really important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the, well, it's the main reason why I wanted to talk to Sabs, because like, you know, I've only been doing it for a couple of years. And like I said to Sabs, I obviously noticed that there weren't a lot of women while I was passing people on my training trail runs. But it wasn't really kind of in my, what would you call that? Like it wasn't. Yeah. I wasn't kind of consciously thinking, oh, there's not a lot of women. And also we all seem to be quite white. It wasn't really something that was kind of forefront in my consciousness. And even on events, I suppose, again, because you're kind of, you know, blinkered at the start of an event. You're on the front line, not in the front line. You're at the start line, and you're thinking about everything that's about to take place in the race and stuff. So you're kind of fairly focused. But yeah, I'm so grateful that I listened to that podcast of hers on women's running back in the summer. It was recorded a year ago, but I heard it on a binge thingy. Because it wasn't until that podcast that I thought, fuck me, there's literally no diversity. And I didn't know how to learn about that. Do you know what I mean? Because like, again, if you're at an event, on the start line of an event, and you do see one or two people of color, then is not the time to go up to them and say, hey, can we have a discussion about diversity in trail running? It's not the time. Gun's about to go off. Everybody's going to do an ultra. So I really, really wanted to, I just wanted to know how I could find out more, and, you know, the kind of questions that we can ask and the people that we can talk to, and how to even start that conversation, because I didn't know anything. I'm massively undereducated in that respect. So I'm very grateful that Sabrina had the time and the patience to sit down and chat with us about that.
And I want to do one of their races because they sound fucking cool as bollocks. If I'm honest, they sound amazing. It's you know, DJs, nice atmosphere, welcoming atmosphere,
food,
different types of food, different types of culture. I'm so up for it. I want to go to one of those because it just sounds, I mean, trail running events are fun anyway, but these sound fun amplified by many times.
They sound they sound like carnivals with a run-in the middle.
Yeah.
Fancy. Yeah. We should definitely, because I think the next Black to the Trails is on the 12th of May, something like that.
Yeah. So pre-Bristol Half Marathon adventure for us.
Yes. I think it's the weekend before the Bristol Half. So we should do Black to the Trails and then the Bristol Half.
Because as you well know, I'm a huge fan of a food truck. I can express myself at a food truck. I know, I'm up for that.
So yeah, it was a really, really, really good conversation. Sabs is a lot of fun. She's a lot of fun. So I urge everyone who's listening to listen to her fabulous podcast, because it is, they're so much fun. They're really, really funny. There's so much energy in her podcasts. But, you know, they're also, every single episode, there's 6 out now. Every single episode I've listened to with all of her guests, there's always something in there that makes you kind of get a little bit, soups emotion. But, you know, there's always a lot of joy and a lot of hope. So it's a brilliant podcast. So I urge everyone to go and listen to that, or buy the book.
Read and buy the book. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that as well, because it is a valuable read.
Oh my God, yeah, definitely. And even if there are people out there thinking, well, you know, I'm not a person of color, I don't know if I could relate to that. It's not just about that. It's about the repercussions, the mental health journey that Sabs went on, obviously because of the childhood trauma because of rural racism. But the mental health issue, the journey that she went on, is something that a lot of people can relate to. You know, addiction, bullying, depression, postnatal depression. All of these things are human experiences. So, you know, I think there are so many valuable lessons in that book. Really, really, really just about overcoming really tough shit. So yeah, listen to the pod, buy the book, get educated, and then let's all get back to the trails.
Should we go and have a coffee and have a chat about it all?
Absolutely. The weekly roast. Is that it?
So, being that Sabrina was our guest this week, I decided to go and find a coffee that was trying to make a difference in that realm, in that sphere. Okay. So I went and found the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equality in America. The Coffee Coalition for Racial Equality are a coalition of individuals committed to building a racially diverse and equitable industry where everyone's talents can be recognized, developed to their fullest potential, and rewarded. They also believe it's important to understand the role that race has played in coffee's history. Now, this was organized in 2020 in the backdrop of the global pandemic, racial tensions, and social unrest in cities across the United States. Phyllis Johnson, who stimulated the foundation of this, she wrote an open letter to coffee professionals with a call to action to leaders to engage in envisioning a more inclusive future. And then on October 2020, the organization was established. Now, I don't normally often do this sort of thing. There was 2 of them. But I want to read out her open letter. It's fair. It's about a page, so bear with me. Okay. Because I think it's worth a listen.
Okay.
Her open letter said, "Dear US coffee professionals, while many organizations are providing updates on how COVID-19 is having a profound impact on the $225 billion US coffee industry, the recent acts of racial injustice galvanizing the world have silenced us. Some have shown solidarity via social media. However, that is not enough. Now is the time the industry needs to come together to take immediate action. Our credibility is at stake when asking coffee producers to create a greater social and equitable programs when we in the US are silent on blatant injustices at home. The pandemic is providing us with new insights as we mourn our losses. Over the past several weeks, we found ourselves facing a new normalcy, quarantined and turned into the most disturbing and blatant acts of racism. Racism and police brutality towards Black Americans are our reality. We cannot wish it away, nor can we continue to avoid the necessary work required to build a more equitable and just society. We must use our power and resources for positive change. As industry leaders, we have a responsibility, not only to our global partners, but also employees, partners, and consumers, all who are participants in building this industry. As a Black woman, let me unequivocally say that racism is an everyday reality that destroys the lives of Black Americans whilst others opt to deny or look away. Your silence has consequences. Your silence and inaction enables systemic oppression that destroys Black communities. Now is not the time to ignore and deflect. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd are among the most recent to join the long list of individuals who face senseless and violent deaths simply because of the color of their skin. We are clearly aware that coffee producers around the world rely heavily on us for economic stability and to be a vocal partner on social and equality issues. I am proud of our industry's efforts towards gender equality. Now is the opportunity for building partnerships to combat racism. Black Americans and the world are in desperate need of change that requires your participation. I commit to helping build a coalition of industry stakeholders who will take concrete steps to move our industry and the nation forward. Please consider joining me. I encourage you to donate to local and national organizations who are on the front lines of fighting racism. Please be more aware of your actions and their unintended consequences. Together, we will make a difference. We are the ones bearing witness to the wrongful tragedies as we sit quietly calculating our own risk in speaking up. We are the ones who can be a force against racism. Phyllis Johnson.
Quite a powerful letter, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's something you don't often think about, is this kind of the coffee industry. You don't think about the producers and providers in the US, in this example, and what they're doing and where they're standing up and where they're putting their power and their voice. And I thought that was quite the letter and quite the call to action. We will put a link in the show notes to the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equality, and they've got all kinds of information on there, how to be involved, how to help, how to donate, how to be part of a positive change for the future. And long may that continue. So, yeah. Go and have a look, eh?
Go and have a look. Yes. And drink some good coffee.
So shall we be honest while we have our coffee?
Let's be very, very honest.
Let's be honest.
So what have you got to be honest about this week, Bale?
Everything's going pretty fucking well, to be honest. The only thing I've got to be honest about is that I haven't done quite as much strength as I should have done. I'll have done 2 lower body sessions this week. I haven't done an upper body session yet. I plan to do one this evening. But no, I'm in a good place. I'm feeling like I'm getting stronger, like I'm getting quicker. I'm running with enjoyment again, which is a huge factor because for the last, what was it, May, June, July, August, September, let's say 5 months. I haven't been running with enjoyment. I've been running as a necessity, as part of a rehab plan, but every step has been uncomfortable and unpleasant and full of fear and worry. And now it's quite nice that is rolling itself back, and I'm out there just pounding around and having some fun and feeling like I can go fast when I want to go fast and going slow when I want to go slow. So that's my honesty this week.
Nice.
How about
nice
yours?
Positive honesty. Mine is also quite positive, I think. I wasn't running for a couple of weeks after the UTBV. I was doing some hiking and some walks and stuff like that, but it was really nice this week to actually do some scheduled runs on a training plan. I really, really enjoyed them, despite the weather that we've had this week. So yeah, I mean, I haven't really got anything. I haven't got a negative, let's be honest, either. I'm really surprised that my legs and my body are fine after my runs. Even after the speeds and stuff, even when I was doing some technical runs in the week, I was I don't know, felt quite strong, enjoyed it. So yeah, very, very positive week for me as well this week, which is
things are going well. What we just need to make sure you do is get that strength session done tomorrow morning, because that is, we need now that we're going to start building up again, we need to make sure your body doesn't forget that it's got to strengthen itself.
Yeah. But I do have one question, because when this podcast comes out, it's going to be Monday the 30th of October, and tomorrow is going to be Halloween, which is obviously hands down the most important day of the entire calendar year. So I just wanted to ask you, James, have you got any scary running stories that you want to share with us?
Yes, I have one very scary experience when I was running, and that was in New Zealand. Years ago, I was staying on a campsite, and it was very, very empty, and it was late at night, and I went for a night run, and I just had a little torch, so I went running through the forest on my own and just poking around. I was on my way back, and I heard this fucking noise. I don't know what it was. But it sounded like a high-pitched giggle / scream / it was probably just some animal doing something, but I shat the bed.
I bet you did.
It was like, I think the Blair Witch Project had come out fairly recently beforehand, and I suddenly just had flashbacks to that film, and I absolutely pegged it out of these woods back to my car that I was sleeping. I don't think I've ever run what must have been 2 miles as fast as that. I thought something was coming out of the woods to get me.
Fucking hell. Yeah, I'd be terrified. I mean, first of all, what the fuck were you doing running around the woods at night? The woods at night. That's mental.
I was on my own. I thought I'd just go for a run. It was,
insane.
Yeah.
Insane. So
what about you? Have you got any scary running
I haven't got any really scary. No, because the thing is, I'm a really cautious runner. I don't take risks. I don't run at night, apart from, as part of planned events. I certainly wouldn't go into the woods on my own, even though they're quite close to my house at nighttime. I've never put myself into any kind of scary situations, which is a shame, because, I do like a horror movie. So yeah, I haven't got any scary running stories, which is rubbish.
Funnily enough, talking about my trip to New Zealand all those years ago, this is where I got this thing, which I always fiddle with when I'm playing, when I'm recording podcasts. It's my little
What is it?
It's my little green stone.
What is it?
Oh, it's like a jade greenstone. It's a Maori thing.
Oh, it's just a piece of stone. It's not like an object.
No,
like
it's a piece of stone. It's got a hole in it, and you can put a string on it and wear it around your neck. I don't do that. I just tend to rub it and play with it for a bit of confidence and luck.
Ah, okay, that's nice.
Yeah,
very nice. Yeah. No, I'm sorry that I haven't got a scary running story to share for Halloween. Sorry, guys.
Not good enough.
I know it's rubbish. Yeah, I should have made something up before I asked you that question. I didn't think you were going to turn it around back on me.
Should we put some music on and forget about the fact you haven't got a scary running story?
Let's do it. Yes. Turn it up.
That'll probably do, won't it?
Yes.
What are you adding to the playlist this week, Maria?
Okay, well, it's obviously Halloween, so it's got to be true to the festival. So the song I'm adding this week is "This Is Halloween" from that film with those puppets, that Tim Burton film.
Okay.
The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Will that be on Spotify, do you think?
I don't know. It should be. It's still a song.
This is
Halloween.
Yes, it is on there. It is on there.
So
we'll add that to the playlist in a bit of a Halloween theme.
Yeah.
I have also gone with a Halloween theme this week, and I'm putting the song "Raise Hell" by Dorothy on there.
Ooh.
And it's from the 2016 album Rock is Dead, and it's a hell of a song. Certainly a good one to run to.
Fun. Okay.
So
well, that's very cool.
Both gone for a slightly scary, hellish-based Halloween theme this week. Love that.
Yeah. I do love Halloween. I think it's one of my favorite days of the year. It's a shame that I live in France, though, because it's not a thing over here, because obviously Halloween is a very, very British Isles-based festival. So it doesn't really exist over here, which is a shame. But I still get all my pumpkin carving.
The Americans do it, though, don't they? They love it.
They do. But that's because there was a lot of Irish immigrants going over there during the potato famine and other times and stuff. It was the Irish that brought Halloween to the States.
There you go. A little bit of trivia for everybody out there today.
Yes. Cool. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a superb Halloween. If you want to write in and tell us some of your scary running stories or general scary horror stories or anything generally scary that would scare us, email us and send us some horror.
Yeah, do it. I'm well up for that. Give us a message on Instagram with some scary running stories, and we'll include them in next week's podcast to bookend the Halloween week. But that is about it from us, is it not?
That's a wrap. Yes.
That's a wrap. So if you want to find out more, head to www.getoutinit.events. There's loads of info on there, and you can sign up for the newsletter, download the personal development friend, and book a free consultation with us to discuss your health and fitness and a roadmap to help you along your way to get you where you want to be. Give us a review, please.
It helps us with the algorithms and all the other things that James often says that I can't remember.
Indeedly doodly. Right, off we go. Cheerio.
Bye.
Thanks for hitting the trails with us this week. We'll meet you back here next Monday for more news, more views, more nature.
All the links for our socials are in the show notes. Find and follow us on Facebook, Insta, YouTube and Twitter. You can subscribe to our newsletter from our website for all the latest updates and camp plans. You get a fun free gift when you sign up.
Leave a review on your podcast app. It's really easy and really helps us out.
And if you've got any friends who could do with getting out in it, then bring them along to next week's outdoor adventure. We'd love to have you all with us.
Catch you next week. Cheerio.